Hello, it's Lisa. I'm here with Shawn Petite's creative team, and today we're going to be making a cover for this art journal book. It is an in and out book by Grumbacher, and I just took out one of the pages and I'm going to adhere it to the top of the blue cover because I thought it would be easier to work on the white. So I'm using some matte gel and I'm going to adhere those two pieces together. I really wanted to do this piece that I had rolling around in my brain. I've been working a lot in the yard and doing gardening, and I was out front of my house and someone stopped at a nice social distance, of course, and she said that gardening is so good for the soul. And I had to run right in and write that down, good for the soul, because it just made me happy when she said that. It's so great to find things that are good for the soul. And creating, doing your art, gardening, maybe cooking, all of those things are good for the soul. So now I have the two pages stuck together to create that white background to work on. And I'm digging through some of my stencils from Shawn, and I've got my favorites, of course, and then I have that little sentiment that I want to make sure I put on this piece. Here I'm going to cover that front piece with some collage papers, a music sheet, and what I was pointing to there was a date. It was March 15th, 1961, and here is some cool piano paper that I got from my friend Sharon, and I really cherish that. It was a great gift from her, and I'm going to use all of those to put down some interest in the background. I'm using my matte medium right now, and I'm going to put a nice cover on the paper and adhere all of those things together. Isn't this great paper with all those holes? From a player piano, that's what it was from. That is really old stuff, and she gave me 2 rolls of this paper, and I cherish it. Thank you, Sharon. I know that you're watching. You love Shawn's channel too. So I'm just going ahead and putting that down, and I'm going to adhere all the pieces and make a nice background to work with. I'm always looking for these different papers that I can use in my backgrounds. It sometimes gets completely covered up, which I think this stuff actually does get completely covered up. But like Shawn says, it's a process. You just start with one layer and you just keep creating, and it's good for the soul. Like the piece is titled Good for the Soul. And it's just fun and enjoying and calming, and I like in the end how it turned out. It was exactly what I had on my mind when that lady, the neighbor, she came by and said that. So I'll take you on this journey with me, and I hope that you enjoy how it turned out. Leave comments below for us so that we can comment back, and definitely subscribe to Shawn's channel, and there will be a list of supplies in the description box so you can go to her shop and purchase any of these stencils. She would really appreciate it. And of course, my channel will be listed at the end also. I am just a new little channel, only 1 year old as of April, and I'm working on growing my channel. So stop by, watch a few of my videos, and please subscribe. It would be great to have you in my group of subscribers. Here I'm using a palette knife and a product that's called Super Heavy Gesso. And I'm thinking that you could probably do this technique with a modeling paste also. A white modeling paste would be just fine. Use what you have though in your stash. It's good to use up what you have. And looks like this heavy gesso is almost empty here. I'm using my palette knife and I'm just adding all kinds of texture. I'm going to cover the whole piece and come right back. Here I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with this piece of tissue paper. I'm going to actually put a whole bunch of leaves and stems and fern and all kinds of great things on this tissue paper, and it's going to go over our background that we just created. This stencil here is obviously by Shawn, and it is called Spring Wreath, and I'm going to use it as a vine. I'm using some archival ink, and the color that I'm using here is called Fern Green, and I'm using just a makeup sponge that I use for stenciling, and I'm going to create a background here using Shawn's stencils, the acrylic ink, and the makeup sponge. So we've got Spring Wreath I'm working on here. Then we have Garden 2, another stencil that I'm going to use. You'll see that in the upper left there. We're going to use old type text for some of our sentiment. And we're also going to work on the sentiment with, believe it or not, some fall words. I'm going to pick out some different letters from that stencil, and you'll see here how it all turns out. And the fern stencil that I do use on this piece is from the Crafter's Workshop also, so that if you need to look for any of those items, they will be there for you. Like I said, I'm using this fall wreath as a kind of a fern, or not a fern, but a vine, and I'm just using bits and pieces and going down to make a trailing vine on my background. And I'm just using some white tissue paper, and I have a piece of white copy paper under there so I don't get it all over my mat. Another color that I'm going to use of archival ink is Library Green. That's a nice green also. And here's the stencils that I used, and here's how my tissue paper turned out. I left a space in the middle, and that's going to be for the sentiment. So now I'm going to put this tissue paper down on my dried background, and that is going to be put down with matte medium. I'm going to give it a nice layer of matte medium, and then we're going to carefully put that tissue paper on top of our art journal cover. Be sure to get all the edges because you don't want that peeling up in the end. I had a little bit too much matte medium on, so I was going to do the top there first, and then I will smooth the matte medium over the top. Now we used archival ink, and that is what we want to use so that it doesn't smear and smudge when we're using this liquid matte medium. And just a soft brush will work. I really like the background. Just giving it a real nice coat and getting all the bubbles out. And that background has a lot of texture because of that heavy gesso and the palette knife that I used. So it looks good so far. Now we're gonna let it dry. It's all dry, and I'm coming back and I'm gonna cut off those edges of the tissue paper and clean everything up. I even created a pocket in front of this art journal, as you might see when I open it up here. I created a pocket because I like to just put little bits and pieces in there when I find something that gives me inspiration. And now I'm just using my X-Acto knife and pulling away that tissue on the left hand side. And I'm going to just clean up my area here. I use a Swiffer and I just Swiffer it right onto the floor, and then I just get it with the vacuum when I'm all done creating. So here's now where I'm going to decide on how to put down the sentiment. I'm going to use the old type text of Shawn's and I'm going to use the largest set of font there and my potting soil archival ink, and again my makeup brush that I use for stenciling, and I'm going to write "for the" on here with that stencil, and then I'm going to find something else for the word good and the word soul, and you'll see I pull those two words out of a different couple of stencils that I had in my stash. Shawn stencils are nice too because you can see through them, so when you're stenciling you can get really great placement. Here's where I'm going to pull out the good from, and then this is a fall stencil, and I looked through all my stencils to see if I could find an S-O-U-L for the word soul. And I'm going to put it on tissue paper because I thought it might be a little bit difficult to go through the letters of this stencil. And I was right, it was a little bit difficult. These letters are kind of close together, and I did have a little bit of problem using them in a different order than using the whole word, of course. But I just did a little bit of masking, and here I messed it up. I wanted to show you, so I had to start over again. And I used a little bit of masking, like I said, with that post-it note, and it all worked out in the end. And I put that word soul down on the tissue paper and used matte medium and put it down on my piece. Here I'm just covering up some sections that I didn't want to get ink through onto the tissue paper. So make sure that you're looking at all of your stencils in a different and new creative way, because it sure is nice to have the different size of letters and the different fonts in some of the different stencils. So here I have my word soul, and now I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. I'm just using a bit of water and a paintbrush there, and just going around it to take the tissue paper off. And that's how it's going to look on my piece there. I'm being careful not to rip it, and I'm just going around the edges, getting all those little bits off. Then I'm going to use the word good there from this coffee stencil that I had in my stash. And it is a sticky backed stencil, so that's kind of nice. And I had cut it in half when I used it for a different project before, because it was quite large and it was kind of difficult to use quite a large stencil on the piece that I was working on when I used it. Here I got a little bit of ink underneath the stencil, so I used just a tiny squirt of my rubbing alcohol, and it came right off with a damp towel. So don't be afraid, you can always fix it if you have some of that rubbing alcohol. And here I actually did it again, so I'm just using that Post-it to mask off the bottom edge. And I'm just cleaning up that little bit that I messed up. Putting down that little piece of tissue paper that says soul down with my matte medium. Had it a little crooked, and then it looks just perfect. And of course we need to let that dry before we go on and use the burnt umber acrylic paint and some water. And I'm going to use a wash and go over the entire piece. There is so much texture on this background. I had to put that wash down so that you could see the texture. And it really makes a really cool piece. It's like the dirt that the flowers are planted in, and it pulls it all together. And then as I was doing this, I was thinking, oh boy, I probably need a dragonfly on here because I really, really love dragonflies, and so I thought I would go ahead and put a dragonfly on the piece also. And that stencil is called Let It Fly, and that's by Shawn, of course. And I'm sorry, Let It Fly 2. This is number 2, and it's got dragonflies and butterflies, and it's really nice. It comes with the masks also. I'm just using a damp towel to wipe up some of that excess, especially in the middle. I didn't want it to take away from my sentiment, but I did want to get that brown in those nooks and crannies of the piece and bring out all of that really great texture. Doesn't that look nice? I'm going to give it a good dry, and I'm going to use these clips because my cover was bending a little bit. Here I got out my watercolor pencils, a brown distress crayon, and I have a brown Stabilo pencil, and I thought I might even use some of my pan pastels. So everything is dry, and now I'm just going to use these items and fill in parts of the ferns and the vines so that it looks connected. I had a little bit of trouble doing this, and it takes a bit of time, so don't rush it. And if you keep going back and forth, and there's a General's 6B Extra Soft, excuse me, I have the yawns today, a 6B Extra Soft charcoal pencil, and that will also create some great highlight or shadows and lowlights, excuse me. And in the end here, I did use my pan pastel. I was only going to go around the piece with my distress crayon in Vintage Photo, because I thought it should just have all of the browns and the greens, and that should be the only colors. But in the end, when I put the dragonflies down with the black archival ink, I needed to pull the edges together with the black distress crayon also, and then it really made the whole piece pop. Here I'm trying out one of my green pit markers to see if that would match the colors of green better. I didn't have the exact color of green, but I'm going back and forth and using my charcoal, my Stabilo all pencil in brown, some of the watercolor pencils and just going back and forth until I got it the way I liked it. I appreciate you stopping here and watching our videos. Shawn is a great inspiration to a lot of people, and I'm very lucky to be on her design team. There's the green I had, and I go ahead and put that on with a sponge applicator that you can get with your pan pastels. There's the dragonfly. I was trying to figure out where to put it, and I figured that I might need 3 of them. So I did 2, one at the top, one at the bottom, and then I just snuck in a couple of wings on the upper left. And it does pull it together. It does that visual triangle that Shawn's always speaking of, and worked real well for the piece. Now I needed to do a little bit of outlining for my sentiment using the brown Stabilo pencil, the chalk, I'm sorry, not chalk, the charcoal pencil, and just going ahead and smudging that with my finger. I like the 3 different styles in the sentiments also. I liked how that turned out. So now I'm going to use the Vintage Photo Distress Crayon, and then I'm bringing in the black because it really needed that black edge. I really like creating that black border around the piece. It just makes it pop. It just finishes it so much. And then I have some still photos at the end, and I would so appreciate it if you would leave me a comment, and I will get back to you. I promise. I like to read the comments, and let me know if there's anything that you would like to have out of Shawn's shop, and you can go ahead and do some shopping. And there's that green. Thank you so much for watching, and you have a wonderful day. And we will see you again. Thanks so much.